Hey everybody, welcome back to Cosplay University. I'm Adonis Cosplay, and today, as you can see, we're a little less formal than normal. I don't have my tripod and I'm out of town, so we're going to do this video the best way we can. Today, we are covering how to paint fabric. Now, a lot of costumes that you'll see will have really cool designs on either the clothing, shirts, pants, whatever, and you can't really replicate that unless you either paint it on or sew in some patterns or you buy it that way, which all three options are good options, but one is harder than the other, one is easier, one is more expensive. So we're going to go with the easiest, but the most time-consuming probably, depending on how good you are at sewing. Painting. Painting fabric is pretty easy. It takes a little while, but I mean, the result is really cool. So we're going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you my tools and the paint that I'm using, and basically what you need to do to make sure that your paint on your fabric looks amazing. First, we need to talk about the difference between painting fabric and dyeing fabric. Now, painting fabric is adding a pigmented substance on top of the fabric that you're wearing or that you're painting over. So you're adding it to it. Now, dyeing fabric is kind of changing the pigment of the material itself. So one is adding and one is changing. We're going to be adding the paint on top of the fabric today. So you're going to have a layer of paint over the fabric. That's going to create a less stretchy material. So if your fabric stretches, the paint is going to kind of restrict that. Keep that in mind as you do this. We don't want you to paint over fabric and then realize that your paint is ripping and stretching and pulling and not doing what you want it to do. So painting, not dyeing this time. Okay, let's go. Alright everybody, so we're going to go over what you will need for this to paint your fabric. I have two different types of fabric. This is like a linen type of fabric which doesn't stretch. It kind of looks more old-timey and has a more rough texture, and this is very stretchy. This is bamboo rayon fabric. It's way smoother, so we're going to see how the paint looks on one compared to the other one. Second, you're going to need some paint brushes. Now there's a bunch of different type of brushes that you can use. I'm going to use this one right here. It's just what I wanted to use for this demonstration, but smaller brushes lend better details. Angled brushes can get better, lines. It just depends on what you need for your paint job. I also have a chalk pencil or a color pencil that's really soft lead. That way you can draw what you want to paint on the fabric. Kind of helps get your outlines in. And then lastly, the paint that we're using is this soft matte in white or blanc. It's by Tulip. You can use a different type of paint if you guys prefer another fabric paint, but this is just what I have. So this is what we're going to use. Now I've laid out this piece of paper because first of all, I don't want to get paint on my desk, and secondly, you want to have something in between what you're painting and the fabric. So if I have two layers of fabric, like a t-shirt that's fully made, you want to put some paper or something inside the shirt so it doesn't bleed through the other side. So we have all of our stuff ready to go, and we will paint. To start today, I have masked off 2 squares of the fabric. This is our linen fabric that does not have much stretch, and this is our stretch fabric that moves quite a bit. So you're going to be able to see the difference between both of these fabrics with fabric paint on it. Now, before we get started, there's a couple of things that you need to decide on. First of all is, what are you going to paint? So if you have a simple design, so for the demonstration we'll be using 3 different squares. If you have a simple design, you can actually use masking tape to mask off the design to create some nice edges, so you don't have to worry about trying to be as straight as possible. You can just paint over the tape, peel the tape away, and you'll have clean lines. Another option is you can freehand it. It's a little bit harder to keep the lines straight, but you can make designs that are more organic and harder to create out of masking tape here. The last option is to get a stencil, which I show how to make stencils in another video, my how to do tattoo video. So that's basically how you would make a stencil for this. It's the same concept, but we are going to do the masking tape idea today, and then I'll show you some freehand at the end. So again, we're going to put a little bit of this on the side and paint our 3 squares after we mask them off. Okay, we've got our sections masked off. Just make sure that you press down nice and good around the edges so these don't lift up and paint doesn't get underneath where you press down. Now it's going to be more difficult on the stretch fabric to get these outlines kind of drawn in just because these move so much, so try your best if you're going to use this method. If you want to just hand paint it, that's also fine. Again, it's going to be more difficult on this fabric than something like this. And remember, masking doesn't have to be neat. This is not neat, this is neat, doesn't really matter as long as it gets the job done, and we can get to painting. Go. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm actually painting from the tape onto the fabric. This is going to help me not get any paint underneath the tape. So you start on the tape and brush onto the fabric. That's a good little technique to use when you're trying to avoid any leakage, I guess, from the underside of the tape. You got it. Paint from the tape to fabric. Cue paint montage. Okay, we have our first layer done on our linen and our stretch fabric. You might be wondering why we're doing 3, and the reason is I'm going to show you the difference between 1, 2, and 3 layers of paint on each type of fabric. Let's zoom in real quick. So as you can see on our first layer of paint on the linen fabric, it's kind of still see-through, which is not what we want. We're going to want this to be as opaque as possible. So this is 1 layer. We'll show you what 2 layers looks like here and 3 layers on this one. This is our 1 layer on the stretch side. So again, 2 and 3 layers after that. I'm going to go ahead and paint the first layer on each of these, and then we'll show you what 2 and 3 layers looks like. So, see you in a second. Alright guys, we have 3 layers put down on the linen and the stretch fabric. 1 layer here, 2 and 3 for each. You can see a pretty drastic difference between 1 and 2. 2 and 3 are less of a difference, but you can still tell that this one is whiter on both of them. We are going to remove this masking tape and pull up the fabric to see what they look like. Alright guys, so we have unmasked our 2 pieces of fabric. Now, as you can see, having the masking tape made these edges super sharp. So that's a great way to do it if you need to make strict lines. Now, I will tell you, remember how I said earlier that if you don't put something behind the fabric, that it could bleed through? Well, check this out. This is like stuck to this paper. So I'm gonna have to peel this off here. Especially with this kind of fabric because it's got so many holes in it. That's all it is. It's basically just a bunch of holes. Oh my. Look at that. Yeah, so you want to be careful with this stuff. It's not going to hurt the outside. Like this, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. But if you didn't have anything between the front and back layer of like a shirt, then those 2 things would be stuck together. And this might actually come out on the back side of the shirt or whatever. So you don't want that. So always have something in between. This can just be ripped right off. It's no big deal. You could pick at that if you wanted to. You could wash it and it would be fine. This paint is washable, by the way, so if you need to wash your costume, it's not going to go away. That's that one. Here's this one. They look pretty great. Now you can tell again, 1 coat, 2 coats, 3 coats for each. 1 coat, 2 coats, 3 coats. So you can definitely tell that having more coats is better. Now, 2 coats is probably sufficient, but if you really want good coverage, 3 coats is where it's at. Now I'm going to test the stretch for you guys real quick so you can see what happens when you pull the fabric or when it stretches while you're wearing it. So that's going to be a big factor also. First up is our linen fabric. Now this isn't supposed to have a lot of stretch. Like this is about as much as it goes in general. So it's not much to it, but you can see that even when you stretch it, the paint stays pretty much intact. There we go. The paint stays. It might stretch a little bit and I might have some wrinkles, but it should be alright. Nothing too damaging there. Yeah, so it looks pretty good. There's no cracks in it. It'll crack over time, just so you know. If you wash it a bunch, this paint will start to have cracks in it if you bend it and stuff. But right now, it looks pretty solid. That's the linen fabric. Now let's check out the bamboo, the stretch one. So this is our stretch fabric. We're going to pull this on each of the three and see how they look. So this is the first one, the one layer. When we pull it, it stretches out pretty good. So you can see that's no longer really a square shape. It's definitely stretched out. Same, if you pull real hard, you're going to get cracks. Can we see here? Yeah. So we pull really hard, you will get cracks. Just be mindful of that. You can still paint with this stuff on here, but you have to keep in mind that it will crack. Alright, the second layer will probably do the same thing, but maybe a little bit less. We'll see. Yep, still cracking. So again, avoid overstretching this stuff because it does want to crack on you, especially with something that's this flexible. This flexible material, painting it is going to be really tough. But it goes back pretty well. You can kind of see there that at the end, it's not overly done. So it's doable and it's manageable, but it will crack easier on this fabric than on the linen fabric. Freehand drawing is a little bit tougher. We're going to kind of demonstrate how the best way to go about this is. I taped this down so the fabric isn't going to wiggle on me. It's got a little bit of stretch to it, but it shouldn't be too bad. But I'm just going to use the same method, go slow, try to make small lines, and then draw. Let's draw a leaf. So we'll draw a leaf in this little area. Probably do one, maybe two coats of it, and you can see how it looks free-handed, okay? Let's go. Okay, so we have our leaf free-handed. As you can tell, it's a little tough, especially on this linen type fabric, to get really smooth edges. This stuff likes to soak up paint, and it has so many holes in it that you'll get a lot of holy edges rather than something that would be clean and smooth as if you used the tape to get those hard edges. But it's not too bad, and it's super easy to do. Just take some practice and some patience. If you want thinner lines, use a thinner brush. There's all sorts of techniques you can use to get sharp images from hand painting. Again, I use this flat brush here. Probably not the best for these lines, especially these curved edges, but it's what I had on hand, and I just want to show you guys that you can use pretty much any tool to get a desired effect. If you have like a fat brush, it's going to be pretty hard, but if you have something simple like this, you can really make it work. Just go slow, have patience. This is a great technique you can use if you need something that's not a polygon or simple shapes. This is more complex, easy to do, not too hard, just gotta, practice with it. Woo! Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you can apply these painting techniques to some fabric of your choice for your cosplay. A great example of how to use this is if you're making the new tunic for Link from Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I've actually made one here, and I've used that very technique to do so. So this is all hand painted, 2 layers of this white paint on this linen fabric. So it's not going to stretch, it's not going to really break unless you wash it or bend it a ton, but that's a great way to do that for these costumes. So take what you learned today, use it for your costume, and I will see you guys in the next class.